Just weeks after a Tennessee teacher is arrested and charged with raping a child in her own home, she's arrested again, this time for reaching out to a victim with threatening messages.
Now you add to it the fact that after they're arrested, after they know that they're caught, they proceed to reach out to the victim and victimize them yet again.
38-year-old Alissa McCommon was arrested the first time on September 8th in Covington, Tennessee, about an hour northeast of Memphis. Police had been tipped off about allegations of sexual misconduct between the teacher and a former student. Since then, multiple students have come forward with similar accusations. Officials say McCommon started talking to students outside of the classroom by playing video games with the children before switching communication to social media apps. After that, they say McCommon sent explicit photos before requesting sexual relations with the victims. McCommon was charged with rape and booked in the Tipton County Jail. She was later released after posting $25,000 bond. But McCommon was arrested again on September 28th after allegedly reaching out to a victim again. Law and crime legal analyst Julie Rendelman says her alleged actions are against the court's rules.
When an individual is released on bond, they are specifically told they're to have absolutely no contact whatsoever with the victims or potential witnesses in the case. So it is a little unexpected that quite a short time after she's released, she decides that it's a good idea to reach out again to one of her 12-year-old victims and threaten them in terms of them going forward with this case.
Investigators with the Covington Police Department say that after her initial release, McCommon used a previously unknown phone number to contact one of the victims. They also say she used a code word with the child that the pair used to use to signal the boy was alone. In the past, she'd allegedly used that same code word before sending him nude photos via Snapchat.
I think the significant aspect of this is not only that she gets out on bond and decides to contact him, but she goes back to her old ways. She uses a phone that no one knows about. She uses a code that she's used before to make sure he's alone, to make sure he's isolated, so that she can say, text, whatever she thinks she needs to try to get this individual on her side.
Among the latest messages, investigators say McCommon allegedly admitted to the sexual interaction. She also told the boy he'd, quote, regret doing this, meaning contacting the authorities.
Anytime you have a sexual abuse of a child, it's a serious allegation where an individual is facing potential jail time, potential registration as a sex offender for arguably the rest of their lives. Now you add to it the fact that after they're arrested, after they know that they're caught, they proceed to reach out to the victim and victimize them yet again. I think any judge, any prosecutor is going to view whatever sentence and kind of raise the bar in terms of how serious this case is.
Rendelman says investigators will likely contact other victims as the investigations continue.
Remember, part of the reason that she's asking if they're alone and then threatening them is she's hoping they won't repeat what she's telling them. And so there may be other victims out there that are too scared to come forward, too scared after she's contacted them yet again. So we expect there's going to be an additional investigation and maybe even more charges levied on this defendant.
After McCommon's first arrest, Law and Crime Network spoke with former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney Florina Altschiller. She says McCommon used a classic grooming tactic to reach out to her former students.
They're not a stranger jumping out of the trees with a gun, raping somebody. They're coaxing their victims into a level of trust and comfort. She was playing video games with these boys. She let them think that they're friends, that they can trust each other. And then once they're in a position of comfort and trust, then it usually starts with minimal inappropriate touching, and it progresses from there to a point where there's actual sex. And this is really pretty common with both male and female perpetrators, this period of grooming young children, making them feel comfortable, making them trust, and then the criminal activity begins. And then sometimes there's either threats or coercion or something that instills fear in the victim to prevent them from reporting it.
McCommon taught 5th grade at Crestview Elementary School in Covington until this year, when she was moved to Charger Academy to teach 4th grade English and language arts. When the police investigation began in late August, she was suspended from the district without pay. Altschuler says it's McCommon's role as a teacher that likely influenced the grooming process.
The reason it's so egregious when teachers do this is because teachers are in this unique position of power where they have constant, daily, 5 days a week access to their students. They are already in a position of trust with their students. They're in a position of power over their students. And when they have this continued access to their students, they're trusted to teach, nurture, and help mature these students, not to take advantage and sexually abuse them. But it is so much easier for a teacher to groom that student because of the nature of the relationship that they already have. You also see this with family members sometimes, and it's the same thing because the family member has frequent access to the child. And because they're in a position of power and control, they're in a supervisory role, they're in a position of trust. The child looks up to them, the child believes them. It really does not take long for them to turn that into kind of innocent, accidental touching sometimes to test the waters and see how the child will respond. And then once they know that they can trust the child to not report or complain, they keep taking it a step further and a step further.
If convicted, it's likely McCommon will be placed on a sex offender registry. On top of that, Altschuler says she would lose her teaching license and could face time behind bars.
Most crimes that are sexual in nature do require registration on the sexual registry. Or the registry of sexual offenders. But that being said, every state is different, and it's going to depend on the level of crime that she's convicted of. Some of the lowest level of crimes do not require registration. I expect, though, that a district attorney's office that has sufficient proof that this did happen is not going to allow a sexual predator to take a plea without the registry requirement. I expect that she will never teach again. I don't see any school district employing somebody who's convicted of something like this. That would be outright negligent of a school district to employ a known sexual offender. I expect that she will lose her teaching license in that state, but also that no other state would hire her if they know of her conviction, which should be disclosed. And depending on the level of crime, yes, you're looking at prison time. If it's a lower level misdemeanor that she pleads to, then she could potentially avoid prison time. If we're looking at a felony, you're talking about at least 1 year in prison, and it just goes up from there.
As the case makes its way through the justice system, Rendelman says additional charges could be on the way. But she's also surprised at how low McCommon's bond was set the first time.
Anytime you have an individual arrested, specifically in a case like this, a teacher, where they're arrested for some type of sexual abuse of a former student that's underage, it's surprising, first of all, to hear that the bond was so low. The bond was only about, I believe, $25,000. So it was significantly lower than many people expect. However, once she's released, and then decides to continue to commit these crimes, number one, it indicates to the judge, we really may not be able to keep her out pending trial because she's at risk of continuing to contact not just this victim, but other victims. And so I think that she's looking at additional charges, and I think there's going to be an additional investigation to see if she reached out to anyone else and what, if anything, she told them.
McCommon now faces additional charges, including coercion of a witness, aggravated stalking, and harassment. This time, she's being held in the Tipton County Jail without bond. Reporting for Law and Crime Network, I'm Sierra Gillespie.